John loved his job. He brought joy to children's faces. He brought laughter to birthday parties. As Yo-Yo the Clown, he was a master of his craft. He could juggle, tell jokes, and twist balloons into fantastical shapes. Kids adored him. Parents hired him again and again. He was living his dream. Or so he thought. Beneath the surface, a darkness lurked. John wasn't always Yo-Yo. He had a past he kept hidden, a past that haunted his dreams, a past that made him crave control, crave power. The clown persona was a mask, a way to escape, but the mask was slipping, the darkness was seeping through. It started subtly, a flicker in his eyes, a sharp edge to his voice. He didn't notice, or maybe he didn't care. One day, a call came, a new client, a big party, a huge mansion. The woman on the phone sounded desperate, eager to please. She offered John double his usual rate. He couldn't resist. This was his chance, the chance he'd been waiting for. The mansion loomed large, casting an ominous shadow. It felt cold, lifeless. John parked his beat-up van at the end of the long, winding driveway. The mansion towered over him, its windows dark and vacant. He took a deep breath, adjusting his wig and forcing a smile. The show must go on. He grabbed his bag of tricks and made his way towards the imposing front door. The door swung open before he could knock. A woman, tall and slender with piercing blue eyes, greeted him. She wore a long black dress that seemed to swallow the light. Her smile was strained, her eyes holding a hint of something sinister. "You must be Yo-Yo," she purred, her voice smooth as silk. "The children are so excited to see you." Her voice echoed strangely in the silence. "They've been looking forward to this party for weeks." John nodded, trying to ignore the fact that he hadn't seen any signs of children, no toys scattered about, no laughter echoing through the halls. "What are their names?" The woman hesitated, a flicker of something cold crossing her face. "It doesn't matter. They'll all be wearing party hats. You can't miss them." John felt a surge of unease. The woman led John into a spacious drawing room. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The room was surprisingly cheerful, in stark contrast to the rest of the mansion. A fire crackled merrily in the fireplace, casting a warm glow on the plush furniture. The woman offered John some tea, mentioning it was her grandmother's recipe. John hesitated. He was parched, but something about the woman's offer made him uneasy. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap. John finally agreed, saying tea sounded great. As soon as the tea hit his stomach, John felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. The room began to spin, the cheerful decor blurring into a sickening kaleidoscope of colors. He tried to speak, to ask the woman what she had put in his drink, but his words came out as a strangled gasp. He stumbled back, his legs feeling like jelly. He reached out for something, anything, to steady himself, but his hand grasped at empty air. He collapsed to the floor, the plush rug doing little to cushion his fall. His vision swam, the woman's face a grotesque mask of amusement floating above him. The last thing he remembered before darkness claimed him was the sound of the woman's laughter, cold and sharp as shattered glass. It echoed in his ears, a chilling prelude to the nightmare that awaited him. He was trapped, his worst fears about to be realized. John awoke with a jolt. His head throbbed, his vision blurred. He tasted blood, metallic and sharp. Panic seized him. He tried to move, to get up, but something held him fast. He looked down and saw thick chains binding his wrists and ankles. They cut into his skin, drawing beads of blood. He was in a small, dark room lit by a single flickering torch. The air hung heavy with the stench of mildew and decay. The silence was broken only by the drip, drip, drip of water from the cracked ceiling. Each drop felt like an eternity, marking the slow passage of time. He had no way of knowing how long he had been imprisoned in that dank cell. Hours? Days? It didn't matter. Time had lost all meaning. He tried to remember the woman's face, to find some clue, some reason for his captivity. But her features remained frustratingly vague, a blur of piercing blue eyes and a cruel, predatory smile. He shuddered, a cold dread settling over him. He was at the mercy of a monster, a predator who toyed with her prey. Fear gnawed at his insides. Time blurred into an endless cycle of darkness and flickering torchlight. He drifted in and out of a restless sleep, plagued by nightmares of being chased through a maze of mirrors by a shadowy figure, with the woman's cold, mocking laughter echoing in his ears. The isolation began to wear at his sanity. He talked to himself, sang silly songs, anything to break the oppressive silence. He told himself it was just a matter of time before someone found him, before he could escape this hellhole. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. Would anyone even know to look for him here? He thought of his clown persona, the one he donned to bring joy to others. It seemed like a lifetime ago, a distant memory from a life that no longer existed. Now, the only laughter he heard was the echo of his own madness, bouncing off the cold, unforgiving walls. Just when he felt himself slipping into the abyss, a glimmer of hope emerged from the darkness. His eyes, adjusting to the dim light, noticed something he had missed before, a loose stone in the wall, just within reach of his chained hands. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot he had. He pulled his chained hands towards the stone, ignoring the pain that shot through his wrists. He chipped away at the mortar, slowly and painstakingly. His fingers bled, raw and blistered. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. This stone, this tiny imperfection in his prison, represented his only chance for freedom, for survival. The heavy door creaked open, shattering the oppressive silence. The woman stood silhouetted in the doorway, her face hidden in the shadows. She held a basket in her hands, its contents obscured by a dark cloth. A chill ran down John's spine, a primal fear gripping his heart. He knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that whatever lay beneath that cloth was not meant for kindness. Oh no. She approached him slowly, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. He wanted to shrink back, to disappear into the shadows, but the chains held him fast. He was at her mercy, a plaything for her amusement. A wave of nausea washed over him as she reached his side, her perfume, cloying and sweet, filling his nostrils. The next few hours were a blur of agony. The woman, energized by a perverse delight, took her time, savoring each whimper, each plea for mercy that escaped John's lips. The tools were used with a practiced hand, each stroke expertly calibrated to inflict the maximum amount of pain without rendering him unconscious. Please, stop. The dungeon echoed with the sickening symphony of his torment. The sharp crack of the whip against his back, the searing pain of hot metal against his skin, the sickening crunch of bone against stone, each sensation a hammer blow to his sanity. He screamed until his voice was hoarse, begged for mercy until his throat was raw. Through the haze of pain, he saw a flicker of something akin to disappointment in her eyes when he refused to break. Is that all you've got, Yo-Yo? The woman eventually tired of her sport, leaving John a broken and bleeding mess on the cold stone floor. He lay there, his body racked with pain, his mind teetering on the precipice of madness. The silence, once a torment, was now a welcome reprieve from the symphony of his own suffering. Time lost all meaning. He drifted in and out of consciousness, his dreams a horrific kaleidoscope of his waking nightmare. The woman's face, contorted in a mask of cruel ecstasy, haunted his every waking moment. He was adrift in a sea of pain, the boundaries of his sanity slowly eroding with each passing moment. He began to hear things, whispers in the darkness, his name echoing through the dungeon, taunting him, mocking him. Were they real, these voices, or were they merely figments of his fractured mind? He no longer knew, and in a way, it no longer mattered. The line between reality and delusion had blurred, leaving him lost in a labyrinth of his own making. As the darkness threatened to engulf him completely, a flicker of defiance ignited deep within his soul. He might be broken, but he was not defeated. He would not allow this monster to break him, to steal his very essence. He would survive. He would escape. He would have his revenge. John's body screamed in protest, a symphony of pain echoing through the damp dungeon. But his spirit, forged in the fires of agony, refused to break. He clung to the memory of the loose stone, his only beacon of hope in the suffocating darkness. Each breath, ragged and shallow, was a testament to his will to survive. He pulled against the chains, the cold metal biting into his flesh. Pain, sharp and searing, shot through his wrists, but he ignored it, his eyes fixed on the loose stone. It was a small stone, insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it represented his only chance. He had to reach it. He had to be free. With a grunt, he shifted his weight, bringing his chained hands closer to the wall. Every inch was a battle. Every movement a testament to his unyielding spirit. The dungeon, once his prison, was now the arena for his fight for survival. His fingers, numb with pain and exhaustion, brushed against the cold stone. A surge of adrenaline coursed through his veins, fueling his determination. He would not die here. He would not let her win. He would break free. Years of performing as Yo-Yo the Clown had prepared him for this moment. captured, tortured, but his mind remained his most potent weapon. He knew his body, knew how to push beyond the pain. He remembered a trick to dislocate his thumb, a painful but necessary maneuver. He had practiced it countless times. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the pain. The sickening crack of bone echoed through the dungeon. A wave of nausea washed over him, but he pushed through it. He worked quickly, chipping away at the mortar around the loose stone. Each tiny victory fueled his determination. Beneath the grease paint, he was a survivor, a force to be reckoned with. Hours turned into an eternity as John tirelessly chipped away at the mortar, his fingers raw and bleeding. The loose stone, once a distant hope, now offered a tantalizing glimpse of freedom. He could feel the wall giving way, his heart pounding in his chest with each passing moment. Finally, with a groan of surrender, the stone yielded, tumbling into the darkness beyond the wall. John peered through the opening, his heart pounding in his chest. It was a tight squeeze, but it was his way out, his escape from this living nightmare. He squeezed through the opening, ignoring the scrapes and bruises that marked his escape. He was free. He stumbled into the darkness, his legs shaky beneath him, but he didn't stop. He couldn't risk her finding him, couldn't bear the thought of enduring another moment of her twisted games. He moved through the darkness, guided by instinct and fueled by a burning desire for vengeance. The mansion, once a symbol of his torment, was now his hunting ground, and he, the hunted, was now the predator. John found his way back to the drawing room, the memory of his drugged tea fueling his rage. The room, once warm and inviting, now felt cold and sinister, a testament to the woman's twisted nature. He saw the silver tea service, gleaming innocently in the dim light. A cruel smile twisted his lips. He picked up the teapot, its weight surprisingly heavy in his hands. He would make her drink. He would make her feel the same terror, the same helplessness that she had inflicted upon him. He would become the monster she had created, a reflection of her own cruelty. He found her in her study, surrounded by books on psychology and the macabre, her face illuminated by the flickering light of a fireplace. She looked up as he entered, her eyes widening in surprise. But before she could scream, he was upon her, his rage a tangible force. She liked to play games. Now it was time to play a game of his own. He bound her with the same chains that had held him captive, his touch rough, his movements fueled by a cold, calculating fury. The tables had turned. John dragged the woman, her screams echoing through the silent mansion. The dungeon would now become her stage. He threw her onto the cold stone floor. He stood over her, his shadow falling across her trembling form. Gone was the jovial clown. In his place stood something darker, fueled by pain and vengeance. His eyes now burned with a cold, unsettling intensity. "Welcome to my world," he hissed. He picked up a rusty bucket filled with water. "Time for your first lesson." He poured the water over her head. She gasped for breath, her body trembling. John watched her, a cruel smile playing on his lips. He was no longer the victim. He was the puppet master, and she was his puppet. Night fell, casting long, eerie shadows across the dungeon. The woman, soaked to the bone and shivering uncontrollably, huddled on the cold stone floor. Her eyes darted around the darkness, searching for any sign of escape, but there was none. She was trapped, at the mercy of the man she had underestimated, the clown she had broken. "What do you want from me? Please just let me go. I'll give you anything you want." John laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the dungeon, bouncing off the cold, unforgiving walls. "You think you can buy your freedom? You think you can erase what you've done?" He stood up, his shadow looming over her like a monstrous specter. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver object. It was a clown nose, bright red and ridiculously oversized. He held it up, the flickering torchlight glinting off its shiny surface. "Remember this? This was me. This was Yo-Yo, the bringer of joy, the laughter in the darkness. And you took it all away." He jammed the clown nose onto his own face, the red a stark contrast to the darkness that now surrounded him. He no longer looked like the clown who had once brought joy to children's parties. He looked like something else entirely, a grotesque caricature, a nightmare given flesh. But don't worry, Yo-Yo's not gone. He's still here, but he's changed. He's evolved. He stepped back, his eyes blazing with a terrifying intensity. "Meet the new Yo-Yo, Yo-Yo the Insane." He picked up a rusty hook hanging from the wall, its sharp point glinting menacingly in the torchlight. The woman screamed, a primal sound of pure terror, but her cries were music to his ears, a symphony of her own making. Yo-Yo the Insane had arrived, and the night was young. The red clown nose, once a symbol of innocent laughter, now dripped with a sinister irony. It sat upon John's face, a grotesque beacon illuminating his descent into madness. The torture had birthed a terrifying creation, fueled by vengeance and torment. The laughter now sent shivers down the spines of those who heard it. It echoed through the mansion, a chilling reminder of the darkness. Yo-Yo the Insane was now a conductor, orchestrating a symphony of pain. Years passed, or maybe it was only days. Time held no meaning within the mansion's twisted embrace. Yo-Yo the Insane became a legend, whispered in hushed tones by those who dared to venture near. Some dismissed it as a ghost story, a cautionary tale to keep the curious at bay. But those who claimed to have seen him, those who had heard the chilling echo of his laughter, knew the truth. They knew that evil, once unleashed, could never be contained. It lingered, a malevolent presence, waiting to claim its next victim. And what of John, the man who had once been Yo-Yo the clown? Did a flicker of his former self remain, buried beneath the layers of pain and madness? Or had he been consumed entirely by the darkness, his laughter a hollow echo of a life long gone? The answer, like the laughter itself, was lost in the shadows, a chilling reminder that even in the darkest corners of the human soul, a glimmer of something monstrous can always take hold. And sometimes, the things that terrify us the most are the ones that were once meant to bring us joy.